When people talk about history, they usually remember kings, conquerors, and the richest men who ever lived. Men who built empires, men who controlled armies, men who filled entire palaces with gold. But more than 2,000 years ago, there lived a man who became famous for something completely different. He may have been the poorest man in history. He owned almost nothing. No house, no land, no wealth, no servants. And strangely enough, he wanted it that way. His name was Diogenes. And while the world chased power and riches, Diogenes spent his life proving that wealth might actually make people less free. A different kind of life. Diogenes lived in ancient Greece during the 4th century before the Common Era. This was a time when Greek cities were full of philosophers, teachers, merchants, and political leaders. Many philosophers taught in schools. Some gathered students in beautiful courtyards to discuss knowledge and wisdom. But Diogenes was nothing like them. He rejected comfort. He rejected luxury. He rejected the idea that happiness depended on money. Instead of living in a home, Diogenes reportedly lived inside a large clay storage jar near the marketplace. People passed him every day as they walked through the busy streets. Some laughed at him. Some insulted him. Some thought he was mad. But others believed he was teaching something important through the way he lived. The philosophy of freedom Diogenes belonged to a school of thought known as cynicism. The cynics believed that society had become too obsessed with wealth, comfort, and reputation. They believed people were becoming slaves to the very things they owned. So instead of chasing luxury, they believed the goal of life should be freedom. Freedom from desire. Freedom from unnecessary possessions. Freedom from the expectations of society. Diogenes took these ideas further than anyone else. He decided to live with the absolute minimum. If something was not necessary for survival, he believed it should be removed. Giving up everything. Diogenes slowly began removing possessions from his life. First he gave up his home, then he gave up furniture. Then he gave up nearly all clothing except a simple cloak. He owned a small bowl that he used to drink water, but one day he saw a child kneeling beside a stream drinking water directly from his hands. Diogenes watched carefully. Then he picked up his bowl and threw it away. He reportedly said something surprising. "This child has beaten me in simplicity." To Diogenes, even the bowl had been unnecessary. His strange behavior, Diogenes became famous across the city for his strange behavior. He walked through the streets during the daytime carrying a lantern. When people asked why he carried a lantern in broad daylight, he gave a curious answer. "I am searching for an honest man." It was his way of criticizing the hypocrisy he believed existed in society. He also ignored social customs. He ate in public places. He slept wherever he felt comfortable. He spoke bluntly to powerful people without fear. Many citizens were shocked by his behavior, but Diogenes believed he was exposing the artificial rules society had created, rules he believed were unnecessary. A man who could not be controlled. Because Diogenes owned nothing, people discovered something unusual about him. He could not easily be controlled. Most people fear losing something, their money, their homes, their social status. But Diogenes had already given those things up. There was nothing anyone could threaten to take away from him. That made him incredibly difficult to control. Some people admired that. Others thought it was dangerous. The meeting with Alexander. One of the most famous moments in Diogenes' life happened when he encountered one of the most powerful rulers in history. That ruler was Alexander the Great. Alexander had conquered vast territories across the ancient world. Cities fell before his armies. Kings bowed before his authority. But even Alexander had heard stories about the strange philosopher living in poverty. Curious, Alexander decided to visit him. When Alexander arrived, he found Diogenes lying comfortably on the ground, enjoying the warmth of the sun. The powerful king stood beside him and said something extraordinary. "I am Alexander the Great. Ask me for anything you desire." For most people, this would have been the opportunity of a lifetime. They might have asked for gold, a house, a position of power, protection. But Diogenes simply looked up at Alexander. Then he said something that stunned everyone present. "Move a little to the side. You are blocking my sunlight." A king's reaction. The soldiers standing nearby were shocked. No one spoke to Alexander this way. But Alexander was not angry. Instead, he was fascinated. Here was a man who wanted absolutely nothing from him. Later, Alexander reportedly told his companion something memorable. "If I were not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes." It was a surprising statement. The most powerful man in the world admiring the poorest man in the city. But Alexander understood something many others did not. Diogenes possessed a kind of freedom that wealth could not buy. Why he remained poor. Many people offered to help Diogenes throughout his life. Some offered him money, others offered him a home. Some even offered positions where he could teach wealthy students. But Diogenes refused nearly all of them, because he believed wealth created dependence. The more possessions people owned, the more they worried about protecting them. The more comfort they gained, the more they feared losing it. To Diogenes, poverty was not suffering, it was freedom. By needing almost nothing, he believed he had escaped the endless chase for wealth that controlled everyone else. The message behind his life. Diogenes did not write many books. He did not build schools like other philosophers. Instead, his life itself became his message. Every action he took challenged society's assumptions. People asked themselves uncomfortable questions when they saw him. Why do we chase wealth? Why do we care so much about status? Why do we believe happiness depends on possessions? Diogenes believed these questions were more important than any lecture. The end of his life. The exact details of Diogenes' death are uncertain. Ancient stories offer different versions. Some say he died peacefully in the city where he had lived for many years. Others claim he passed away after a long life of wandering and teaching. But even after his death, his ideas continued spreading. Philosophers continued discussing his life for centuries. Some criticized him, others admired him, but almost everyone agreed on one thing. Diogenes had lived exactly as he believed, without compromise, without fear, without possessions. The lesson from the poorest man. Today, thousands of years later, the world still chases wealth and success. Without compromise, without fear, without possessions. The lesson from the poorest man.